Yeah. Hello, Newcastle. Welcome to the Microsoft Envisioning Centre here in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I'm Kirsten Chambers-Taylor, the head of UK Trade and Investment for this region, and I'm here with Steve Ramsey, the director for this Microsoft Centre. We are both associated with the British American Business Council and in association with the Northeast Chamber of Commerce, the Newcastle Gateshead Initiative and UK Trade and Investment in Newcastle. We are working together to bring a delegation of companies, organisations and universities from the greater northeast UK to meet with counterparts here to help with business development, university research and just to build the bridge across the pond. Steve and I are going to talk about why Boston, what's in it for you, the sort of things that you would be doing on this delegation, and we look forward to welcoming you to Boston at the end of October. So firstly, let's learn a little bit about Steve, as he is a native of Newcastle. And Steve, what brought you to Massachusetts? And tell us about this beautiful facility.
So I'm originally from Denton-Burn. I've still got family in the West End that I kind of visit frequently, but I've been in the US since 2000. I started first off in Dallas, Texas, and I've been with Microsoft for 3 years. I'm director of the Technology Centre here in Cambridge, and Cambridge is a sort of sub-city of Boston itself. It's within Boston, in fact, across the river is Boston proper. It's sort of a relationship between Newcastle and Gateshead. And I've been here since, I've been in the area for about a decade now. Basically, I mean, why the Northeast? Why? I think there's a good opportunity overall. My visits back and forth to the northeast of England, what I've seen is a massive resurgence in capability, capacity, the way that the city itself's developed, the way that Microsoft has kind of reached into that area, and I think there's a huge opportunity from what I see. I mean, I've been in business now for almost 20 years, and what I've seen is the sort of the way that we've developed in this region, and there are parallels between here and the northeast, and I think, you know, working with UKTI and your team, Kirsten, I think, you know, what's important for me is there's a good opportunity to now be taken advantage of. And the way I've seen the Northeast develop is how I've seen the New England area develop. And I've lived in this area now for almost 10 years, actually for over 10 years. I live in New Hampshire, which is 1 hour north of the city. And you know what, I think there's a big opportunity. In fact, just this morning, I ran a video conference between a guy called Paul Smith, who runs Campus North. And Campus North is down by what was Pilgrim Street fire station in Carlisle Square. And Paul basically teleconferenced in actually within the setting we're in right now, when we actually had an open conversation and dialogue about the opportunity for IT incubation and startups here in Boston. And that was in parallel with a guy that runs what they call Mass Challenge. And he was the CEO, the managing director for Mass Challenge in London, in actually across Europe. So for me, there's a ton of opportunity. Clearly, obviously, you need to be qualified, and I think people, when they come here and see it firsthand and develop the networks, they'll see it for themselves.
Yeah, we often find UK trade investment clients are surprised by what is here in the Boston area.
Right.
We're almost a flyover state.
Right.
As companies go to New York
Right.
and LA, and I think companies from the Northeast UK would be really amazed at the access that you can gain from to big corporates that are HQ'd elsewhere in the US, but also have research facilities and sales offices here.
Right.
Companies, you know, small companies like Google and Apple. VMware, EMC,
right.
I mean, LinkedIn is here, Facebook is here, on the technology side, and then
healthcare, life sciences. I think it's massive. I mean, the thing to get a gauge on is if I walk out of this building within Cambridge, you know, if you think about that as the kind of city centre of either downtown Newcastle, in the centre of Newcastle, within probably the equivalent of walking from Gray's Monument to the bottom of Grey Street, I will have probably touched the vast majority of all of the major healthcare life science businesses. And you guys all know that that's probably no more than about a 5-minute walk 10-minute walk at max.
Mm.
And I think in this area, in this region, I remember when I worked with Newcastle Gated Initiative. So in sort of figuring out, is this something that has mileage, and is there something that businesses in the northeast would get from it? What I would tell you is there's a massive curiosity and a natural relationship between the US and UK markets. I think you guys form the bridge of that in terms of the services that you offer. I know Simon Crosby in the UK TI team in the northeast, as well as Julie Dodds in the NGI team. That's the Newcastle Gated Initiative. What they've got is they've got a huge interest around turning rocks over and seeing just how much opportunity there is there.
Right.
What I would tell you is that I was reading actually from some of the material that Julie's team produce, as well as James Ransbotham and the Northeast Chamber of Commerce, and basically, with a third of clinical trials in the UK taking place in the Northeast, that's got massive relevance to organisations here. What organisations here are looking for is, are there other opportunities, particularly potentially around the outsourcing field for clinical trials, that they can take advantage of? And what they're looking for are those introductions where potentially it gives them access to a different market, and that's just life sciences.
Yeah, Boston is also known for its financial services industry.
Right.
There are more than 500,000 people who work in the healthcare industry.
Right.
It's a massive centre for research and development pretty much across all centres. And universities, we have those small, pokey little universities, MIT and Harvard, as well as I think there's 120 colleges and universities in this area. So for companies selling into the education industry, it's a huge opportunity.
Right.
Digital media, clean energy. We're about to have the first US offshore wind farm just off the coast of Massachusetts. I know there's been a facility. Which was influenced
by a Northeast business, right?
Actually, it was a UKTI introduction of Andrew Mill at NARAC a few years ago. It helped build the blade test facility that is there.
Yeah.
And there are UK companies consulting on the offshore wind program. So there's a lot of UK company activity in this area too. National Grid is here, AstraZeneca, Syngenta. There are a number of companies that we form relationships with. And I think what's going to be great about this mission is that we can take the most innovative companies from the Newcastle area and Greater Northeast and bypass all the sort of legwork that companies would need to do on their own.
Yeah.
Simply introduce them right into those companies. They may have target companies themselves.
Right.
May just want to come and scope, see what's here, and be surprised.
Right. I think the other thing I would add though to that is, and the one thing, so this is kind of an off-the-cuff discussion so that you guys can kind of get a feel for, qualifying attendance and that sort of thing. The one thing that I would say unsolicited is, the sort of trifecta of having connection with local businesses here, it's key. Having connection into the consulate and the UK TI team, so who's who and's on the ground, which I think is what Paul Smith would attest to. How easy that was to set up is here. Connections into the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which is the state government of the area, and the influence they have in the region is here. And they're all plugged in and they're all ready and willing to help drive connection here. I think the other key thing is this is also around the development of a network for you to then further qualify investment here, not necessarily a need work. I will tell you there's opportunity in this market. We ourselves are structured, we're about a $500 million business unit, just discrete to the New England area. The majority of that comes purely out of Boston. What I would also say is that connectivity through things like the British American Business Council and the members of it will facilitate the right connections that you need, whether it's into state government, whether it's into other businesses. And it's that networking of you tell us what you're after and we'll somehow figure out where the right connections are to then facilitate and make it happen. And the sort of synergy from all of that is that if you've got an idea, whether it's, I want to have a sales office there, I want to kind of feel out the sort of market a bit more, there's connections here that can basically facilitate that. I think that the key part is it's more about brokering the introduction and helping you qualify. What I would also tell you is there are a number of really key influential people here that actually are from the Northeast. The guy who's the head of Four Seasons for the eastern seaboard. So that's from Boston right the way down to Miami. He's a native of the Northeast. There's a guy who is actually in my home city, Paul Willis, former Newcastle junior player, established Seacoast United, a very successful business up on the Seacoast. I'd love to have Paul just come and talk about his experience. And there's a lot of guys, I think, like me, because a lot of folks have said, well, why would you do this? And I think, like many people from the Northeast, there's a special affinity there where this is kind of my shot to kind of give something back to the region. But I think also what I would add is that the climate to kind of really make some stuff happen relies on having a synergy from supporting organisations. And I'm not just saying this when I say it, but you know, the Consul General and the UKTI team led by Kirsten, they've got a business head on their shoulders in terms of getting stuff done. And I know it's important when you're about to take time out of your business and your organisation, and you're about to spend probably some significant cash on making a trip, that you're going to make good use of your time. And what I would tell you is, I've come here as you know, a lad who went to sort of a pretty rough school in the West End at John Marley and Slatyford, and I've done very well here in terms of how business gets done here. And I know anybody that comes with that right attitude in terms of what they want to do growth-wise can do the same thing. And I think the one thing I'll extend is that, you know, there's a bunch of willing players here to help you guys be successful. What this really is about is opening the door and showing you kind of a market and some of the opportunities in broker in connection to the local organisations that can help facilitate to actually make that happen.
Brilliant, thank you. What we'd like to do is invite you to be in contact with us and with Julie Dodd, with Simon Crosby, with Steve Ramsey and I to learn a little bit more, see whether this would be interesting to you. We're going to do a few more chats over the next 4 or 5 weeks. We will bring in some guest speakers other than ourselves to talk about different parts of the network and what you could expect when you come on the delegation. And we hope that you will visit with us at the end of October on this delegation. So thank you very much, Steve.
You bet.
Fabulous location here at Microsoft, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks. Done. Easy.
Okay.
So
I didn't dance. I really wanted to dance.
Keep it recording.
No.
Still is. I didn't press stop.